Hello everyone, I am SystemCheck66, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the reveal of zombies returning to Resident Evil. That's right, no more flipping werewolves, no more dudes who can control metal like Magneto, and no more Lady Ds, although I'm slightly disappointed with that. But in the clip, as you can clearly see, Grace is taking on like one zombie and then we get a zombie come from the right. And I love that dynamic, because we're going back to zombies being a real threat and something that can overwhelm you, and also slow zombies, which I'm a huge fan of, as opposed to the faster zombies. So I love that there's a dynamic there, that these zombies can overwhelm you again, and it's just reminding me so much of like previous, older Resident Evil titles, as well as the remake of 2, 3, etc, etc. Thing is, Koshi Nakanishi, who is the game's director, previously he worked on Revelations, and he was the director of Resident Evil 7. So director of Revelations 1, director of Resident Evil 7. He kind of knows how to make a good bioweapon, essentially, make a good threat, a good monster. The designs in Revelations 1 were great. I love the roster of bioweapons that we faced off against, and then he stripped it back for Resident Evil 7, but I loved the bakers and the moulded and sort of the very small array of monster types that we got in that game. He knows how to create a good monster, but he's never handled zombies to my knowledge. I mean, the bakers were kind of zombified, but they weren't as well. They're a little bit more advanced than that in terms of like stages of the virus taking them over. And the ooze monsters from Revelations 1, they kind of were like zombies, but not, if that makes sense. They moved like zombies, they acted like zombies, but they're a little bit more of an advanced bioweapon, much like the bakers. But he knows how to sort of create a shuffling, slow threat that can overwhelm you, and that can be quite sort of, not tanky, but tough to put down. What I'm trying to get at is the man knows what he's doing, and I have utmost faith, in his decision to bring back zombies into this game. And from what this short clip shows us, he's nailed it. These zombies are a real threat. They can overwhelm Grace. They're slow shuffling zombies, but they look tough to put down, much like in the Resident Evil 2 remake or Resident Evil 3 remake. And I'm happy with the designs. I think they look cool. They look like they've just turned, as opposed to the ones from Resident Evil 2 remake or 3, where some of them, have bits of flesh and stuff falling off of them. Sometimes you can see their like teeth just poking out because their lips have rotted away. These look a little bit more, how shall we say, juicy and fresh. They're fresher. Obviously, these are only like 2 zombies that we get to see, so the others could be severely like decomposed. But yeah, I really like the designs, and they're just wearing normal, they're just people that have been infected, and they're just wearing like suits and ties and stuff, and that kind of calls back to like the first Resident Evil. And to be honest, in this particular clip, there's a lot of like nods to Resident Evil 1, in the Spencer Mansion and the RPD from Resident Evil 2. The design of this particular location has a lot of like classic Resident Evil vibes, and it looks very much like the Spencer Mansion. That's where my mind goes to when I'm watching this clip and her taking on zombies. It's great. It's a great callback. It's beautifully handled. Like it looks brilliant. So my excitement for this game has gone up even more. I am excited for this game because I do like Nakanishi as the director for Resident Evil projects. I think after Shinji Mikami, I think this dude is doing good things with the IP. I wasn't disappointed playing Revelations. Is actually one of my favourite Resident Evil titles to go through and play. I actually really like that game. And I wasn't disappointed with Resident Evil 7. Yeah, it was different, definitely. It was very different, but I liked it. I liked it for what it was. And I think some of that is the callbacks to like Evil Dead or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I'm a fan of those 2 films, especially Evil Dead 2 and like the Evil Dead remake, and just Evil Dead in general. Except for the last film, that was kind of trash. But I'm getting off topic. The fact that it had so many callbacks to these, these grindhouse video nasty horrors that I grew up on, I was a huge fan of that, and I like the idea of the moulded. Originally, when Village took that and just went mental with it, I didn't like it as much. But the initial idea for the molded and Evelyn as this bioweapon that could sneak in and and just infect everybody and just take over a battlefield, in a war zone, was really interesting. I thought it was really cool. That whole hive mind idea, everybody's connected to the hive mind. I loved that, and it also opened up a great narrative aspect that we'd never seen in Resident Evil and rarely see in a horror game, and that was that we get to kind of see the people affected by bioweapons, being infected by the viruses that are in this series. And Ethan Winters, who was the main protagonist, for those not familiar with Resident Evil 7, he gets to sort of speak to Jack Baker and see the Bakers in a different light, because Jack Baker's able to talk to him. Because the hive mind is shared, he's able to sort of speak to Ethan. And while Ethan is cocooned by Evelyn, and before Mia rescues him. And also, even speaking on Mia, she's she's almost like an antagonist. She's not really a protagonist. She's a very sort of grey area character. Let's just say that. She works for the company who created Evelyn and created this virus, the mold virus. Well, I say they created the mold virus. They didn't, because Village kind of retconned that. But they're using Evelyn, as a bioweapon, and with the intention to sell. And Mia is a character that has this knowledge. She's not sort of ignorant. She's not like an Umbrella employee down the line, that doesn't know what Umbrella's really doing. Like the grunts, basically, within Umbrella. A lot of them didn't know what the hell was going on, and by the time they did know, it was too late. Mia's fully aware of what Evelyn is and what the company is transporting, who are the Connections, and she works for the Connections. And so she starts off as this antagonist. She's a bad guy, basically, but she has a redemptive arc. Some people don't agree with that, but it is what it is. That's how things play out. And I think that it was a very unique take on Resident Evil to have characters with that much depth, definitely. So Ethan Winters as a character, not a lot of depth. Let's be honest. He's basically the player put into this world. But Mia and Jack Baker, the Bakers, and the way that Evelyn controls everybody with this hive mind, I think is wholly unique, and that's why I like Nakanishi as a director and as the director to Resident Evil Requiem. I think it's a good decision that they've chosen him and his team to handle Resident Evil Requiem, because I think they can pull it off. And I'm not going to say they will pull it off, but I'm 80%, 85% sure that they'll pull it off, definitely. Because I have faith in him as a director, and also guiding the team to make this game amazing, and a true send-off to the Umbrella plotline that's been running through the series since its inception. So yeah, got faith in him as a director. I have faith in the team. He'll steer him in the right direction. He'll guide him. And I think just from this one clip and all the trailers we've been seeing of the game, it is definitely heading in the right direction, because I'm happy with what I've been seeing. And the fact that they've added zombies again, how the zombies move, how they react, the way they look, I'm happy with all that, and I'm happy with the particular location that she's in. It just, like I said, it just reminds me of Resident Evil 2 remake, where the zombie's coming down the stairs and you got to shoot it, in the RPD, or even the original Resident Evil, the zombies coming down the stairs. It just had that, that look about it, and that kind of vibe and that feel, and I think the atmosphere is on point. The fact that you can turn off light switches, turn them back on is great. It's going to add so much dynamics to the gameplay, where you can turn the lights off and maybe hide yourself from a particular stalker enemy. Now, they've said that the enemy in the trailers isn't going to stalk you throughout the whole game, so I think they're going to have different type stalker enemies in little segments. That's what I think they're going to do, and that's cool. I'm fine with that. A lot of people are going to be fine with that. We just didn't want, like another Jack Baker, even though I never thought that Jack Baker was that overdone, to be honest with you. You only sort of bump into him a few times, and then the other times you'll be trying to escape Marguerite, or trying to fight through Lucas's traps. So he wasn't in it like all the time. There's only a few points where he turned up. When speaking on Mr. X was implemented very well. I will say that there's a few moments though as a stalker enemy, sort of chasing you through pretty much the whole game of a RE2 remake, that he does get a bit tiresome. Like when you have to use the jack on the bookshelf, that's annoying because he can just appear. Like every time I play that game, it's at a point where he is stalking you and he finds you. Maybe I've just got bad luck, but he'll always like just be coming through that door, and as you're about to jack the flipping bookshelf and then move it over, he'll just smack me in the back of my head. So I have to then climb up the ladder and make my way around again, so that he follows and goes around, and then I've got more time. And it is a bit annoying, it is irritating. So, I think that Jack Baker, sort of compared to Mr. X, was done a little bit better, I will say that. But I can see why people eventually were getting fed up with the stalker enemy, and then we had, for the small amount of time that we had her, we had Dimitrescu. So, and I think by then, even though she was fit as hell, people were getting a bit fed up with the stalker enemy, sort of, in Resident Evil. But if they're in small segments and stuff like that, I think that's going to be fine. It's going to be cool. So, but with the small clip that's leaked and been shown off, I'm very happy with what I've seen. Very, very happy. I think that Grace is going to be. I think she's going to be a good character. I do, within the universe, and I already like the character. Like, I like her design. I like what she's wearing. I like that she's like sort of green. Hasn't been in the field before, and this is like her first time. She's linked to obviously a character from Resident Evil Outbreak. It's just showing off like the amount of love and respect for the series and for the older games as well within the series. The older sort of atmosphere and look and tone, and that's why I'm excited, because I can see that love poured into this game just from that one little clip. A lot of people can, and it's paying homage and showing a lot of respect to the original Resident Evil and the Outbreak series, and there's shades of Resident Evil 7 in there, and there's shades of Resident Evil Nemesis, and it's just giving me good vibes. And yeah, I'm hopeful that this is going to be epic. Definitely. I hate using that word now because it's overused, but I do think this is going to be an epic Resident Evil adventure, definitely. And it kind of has to be if it's going to be tying up loose ends, finishing the Umbrella storyline, and explaining who the connections are, what they've been doing, and why the BSAA are using bioweapons and stuff like that. It's going to have to be, a proper conclusion. For some of us, we already know a little bit about the connections, or we know about the BSAA and how they were founded and from Revelations, but there's going to be a lot of people that maybe have just got into Resident Evil or aren't familiar with certain games, say 7 or Village or whatever, Resident Evil Nemesis, and they're not really going to know who the connections are, and sort of who the BSAA are, and kind of how long Umbrella's been up to this shady shit. Also, Blue Umbrella is another one that we still don't know a whole lot about. Are they actually good, or is it just a front? Is it just a cover up like Umbrella has done previously? All of these plot points are going to have to get tied up, definitely. And to do that successfully, we can't have another Resident Evil 6, is what I'm trying to get at. We've got to have something a bit more coherent and just not as all over the place. But like I've said previously, and from the clip that I've seen and the trailers I've seen, I definitely have faith in Nakanishi and his team. And I think that they're keeping this game sort of close to their chests and hidden, and the story details hidden, and the characters hidden, so well. And I think it's because they know they've got a winner. They know they've got something good on their hands. And you can tell when companies get a little bit afraid of their product and are unsure how people are going to take to it, they tend to release more and more information about it. But with Capcom at the moment, Nakanishi and his team, they are very confident, and that makes me confident that the game's going to be good. Personally, I think they've looked at Village and and thought, what the hell happened there? Because Village is another one like Resident Evil 6 that just went all over the place and just narratively wasn't good.
you know, and not just narratively, but just like Chris building a mini tank to fight a Michael Bay transformer at the end of the game. Like, yeah, that sounds as crazy as it was when I played it, you know, and that wasn't Resident Evil, no way. So, you know, Resident Evil has been many things, but to introduce something like that was just so far removed from what Resident Evil is, and it was so silly. Like, yes, Resident Evil has been silly and campy, you know, before, but this was just taking it to a different level. It just didn't make any sense within the universe, the world, you know, that Resident Evil has created. And also the fact that Requiem looks scary. It looks like it's going to be an actual survival horror, as opposed to Village, which was an action shooter. Compared to Resident Evil 7, again, the brainchild of Nakanishi and his team, which was scary, you know. But a lot of people complained that it was too scary. Have you played Silent Hill 1 and 2? I just want to ask. Because you don't know what scary is, or even Project Zero, which is known as Fatal Frame in the US. Outside of the UK, it's known as Fatal Frame. Have you ever played any of those games? Or even Outlast. I haven't even played Outlast. I've seen clips of it. I know I need to play it. But yeah, Alien Isolation. There's another one. Like, compared to those, Resident Evil 7 it's like a 12A horror. Let's just say that. You know, it's not that scary to the point where people complain so much that they wanted Village to be less scary. I just think that's stupid, and Capcom pandered to it, and I think that was a dumb decision as well. So I think that Nakanishi and his team have gone, nah, like, sod that. Like, we're making a scary survival horror game, and it looks, you know, it looks good. It looks scary. Like, not scary like, oh, I'm gonna shit my pants scary, but it's got that vibe. It's got that tone. It's got the atmosphere there, you know. And with the locations, and this particular location from the clip, along with the zombies, it's a clear nod to the original Resident Evil, and I love that. And I'm glad that they're keeping this game close to their chest and then not ruining it or spoiling it. I will share my thoughts before we end this video on this kind of like Leon pandering, just every YouTube channel that covers Resident Evil, you know, that's following Dusk Golem's bullshit. They just keep speaking about Leon, and it's become a Leon wankfest, a circle jerk for Leon. And it's like, I like Leon as a character. He's one of my favourite characters in the series, yeah. But when I'm seeing every channel just bringing in views and clicks from regurgitating the same Leon leaks, it's getting boring. Like, as a Resident Evil fan, as a guy that was there from day one that had director's cut, this sort of stuff, it's boring me. I'm like, just give it a rest, just stop. Even Capcom's getting fucking tired of their shit, seriously. Like, Capcom are like, look, yeah, please stop believing all these fake leaks and these channels that keep... They haven't obviously directly attacked channels, but they're pretty much saying, stop eating this shit up, because a lot of it isn't true. Will Leon be in the game? That's the main thing. He could be. They could be trying to throw people off the scent. Even though they said, you know, he's not the main protagonist. That's what they said. He's not a protagonist for this game. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be in the game as like an NPC. Yeah, so that could be true. It's kind of like Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2, or, you know, countless games we could name that have a character come back, but they're like an NPC. So they're kind of mentoring your character, this new character. So could Leon be in the game? Well, yes, it's a high possibility he's in the game. I don't know why people would find that shocking. But if he isn't in the game, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to, you know, be crying about it. You know, he's been in many, many games and many CGI films. And if you guys, you know, don't have the CG films, or you haven't watched Infinite Darkness on Netflix, you know, or you haven't got the remake of 4, but you're crying that he's not going to be in Requiem, that doesn't make any sense. Just go back and play those games that he's in, and watch those CG films that he's in. He's been in a lot of Resident Evil media. A lot of people call him the Resident Evil poster child. And to be honest, at this point, kind of is. Capcom have also said, the producer of Resident Evil Requiem has said and stated that there will be returning characters that hail from the Raccoon City disaster. They survived the Raccoon City incident, and they will be returning. Can Leon be one of those characters? Of course, but it doesn't mean that he's going to be the only character. Could Chris and Jill show up? Definitely. Could Billy Cohen or Carlos Oliveira turn up, which I kind of want to happen more. Yes, that could happen. And also, going by the amount of love and admiration for the older Resident Evil games and the lore in general, that could be a possibility. Could Rebecca Chambers come back? Yeah, Sherry Birkin. Hey, you know, we didn't get to see her after Resident Evil 6. It was quite interesting that she could like heal herself and stuff like that through being exposed to the G virus. So could she show up? Yeah, that's a high possibility as well. You know, would it be characters from the Outbreak series because it's Alyssa's daughter, and Alyssa's involved in the plot of this game? Yes, all these characters, like Kevin from Outbreak or whoever else, could make an appearance, not just Leon. There are other characters within the Resident Evil universe, not just Leon. This is what I'm trying to get at, and you know, and I've got love for many of them. So it's kind of weird to me that Leon's the only one getting the spotlight. Because personally, I'd like to see Carlos Oliveira make a return, more so than Leon. I've seen Leon, you know, played as him many times. But can the game have Leon and Kevin from Outbreak and Carlos? Of course. It's a possibility, yes, that could happen. Definitely, as NPC characters. So, you know, I think that's why Capcom are trying to say, like, keep your expectations like just medium range for now, and stop sort of believing all these leaks that are coming out, because you might be disappointed. That's why I think they're saying that. We might not play as Leon, but he's in the game, he's an NPC character, and you know there's going to be people having a conniption fit over the fact that we don't play as him. I'm fine with not playing as him. I've played as him many times. If he's an NPC character, that's cool. If we get to play as him, hey, I'm happy with that as well. But for those of you that are sort of just on this Leon hype train, just listen to what Capcom's saying. You know, they're trying to keep this game sort of unspoiled and the plot secret, as well as the returning characters are secret. And they've kind of had to go out of their way and say, yeah, there are going to be returning characters, because they were asked about it and because it's something that can't really be avoided. But at the same time, you can tell that Capcom are pretty much just trying to keep this game as secret as they can until its release. And we get to... Even I haven't been watching the spoiler videos and stuff, because I want this to be a surprise when I play through it, you know. It's one thing I realised through my time on YouTube and making Resident Evil content, when I would cover, I don't know, a leak, you know, back when I was a bit more just naive to everything, I'd say, like a bit more ignorant, let's just say that. And I didn't realise that some of the best things about a video game is experiencing it for yourself and watching it all unfold without having prior knowledge or a leak that doesn't sort of come true, you know, and you're sat there going, the leak said that this would happen and it didn't, and so you have this false expectation of how the game's going to be. It happened with Phantom Pain. There was loads of leaks. I didn't cover the game myself, but there was loads of leaks that came out about it, and they turned out to be false. Like, we'd meet Sniper Wolf and things like that, a young Sniper Wolf, and that didn't happen. And so I had this false expectation of the game, and then when it came time to playing it and finishing it, even though the ending had been leaked, I knew sort of what the ending was about. It was disappointing. But then after my third playthrough of that game, because it just got its hooks into me, I thought to myself, would I have been disappointed by the ending if I hadn't known what was going to happen? And am I disappointed because I do know what happens, and, you know, and it plays out like that? Was I disappointed because it was a different sort of game and story to what I was expecting, being a Metal Gear fan from the very first game? I wanted to see Sniper Wolf and find out more about Psycho Mantis, etc, etc. But in reality, you know, it wasn't trying to be that type of game and story. And yes, the trailers were misleading, I'm not going to lie. It did hype it up as this like untold story within the Metal Gear saga that we'd only sort of heard about. And I think that was on Konami's part. I think that's how they wanted to market the game. So yeah, it was misleading, but at the same time, I went into it with false expectations, and, you know, I was disappointed. And I think after that, as well as, you know, playing through Village and being disappointed, and, you know, seeing leaks of the remake of 2, the remake of 3, in the end, I just thought to myself, I'd rather not be spoiled. I'd rather not spoil myself when it comes to playing a Resident Evil game. And I only ever really covered the leaks because I wanted to talk about this stuff, and theorise with other Resident Evil fans. That's why I did that. But then I realised, yeah, it's kind of wrong. Like, it's wrong. I shouldn't be covering this stuff. It's spoiling it for me. More importantly, it's spoiling it for everybody else, or it's giving them false hope and false expectations. And then it's also doing a disservice to the series that I love, as it creates something that we want to see as opposed to the vision of the director like Nakanishi and what his vision is. And then at least when we play through the game and we get to see his vision, that's his vision, that's not ours, that's not what we're expecting. That's him going, hey, this is what I wanted to create, here you go. And we experience it, and we either like it or we don't. Whereas if we're building up false expectations and hope for a certain storyline or how the game's going to play out, we're creating scenarios that might not happen when it comes time to play Resident Evil Requiem. And if Leon isn't a playable character, that's not down to us. That's down to the team that made it and Nakanishi who's directing it, and the producer who's producing it. And if we can't play as Leon, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. So we've come full circle. That's the point I wanted to try and make. Obviously, after this, I am not going to speak on whether Leon's in the game or not, but I wanted to try and get people to understand that it's not that I hate Leon as a character, and it's not that I dislike people that are simping over Leon, or want Leon to be playable. If Leon's playable, like I just said previously, I'd be happy. But I'm just trying to get the point across that you can't build up these false expectations of something that someone else has created. Like I said, you either like it resonates with you, or you don't and it doesn't resonate with you. So that's why I think you shouldn't be sort of jumping into these fake leak videos. Yeah, and anything that Dust Golem says, don't believe it, or at least take it with a handful of salt, because he doesn't have a 100% proven track record, and it's a very grey area when it comes to the leaks he's gotten right in the past. It's a very grey area, in terms of time frames and dates, from when the leaks were posted to when the information was actually available and readily available. So yeah, I'd just say, just blank it all out. Just watch the YouTubers like Project Wesker and other YouTubers that don't cover this stuff, because you might be severely disappointed when it comes time to playing the game. Honestly, you'll play it, and if you don't get to play as Leon, a lot of you are going to be severely disappointed, and you're just going to disregard Grace Ashcroft, who I think is going to be a really interesting character. You're going to disregard her because you're just going to be too eager to play as Leon Kennedy, and he's not going to be in the game as a playable character. Or he might be. But the point is, and even if he is, you're still going to be disregarding Grace Ashcroft. You're going to basically not want to know anything about that character just so you can get to the parts of Leon. And to be honest, I think she's going to be a very complex character. I think there's definitely something to do with her blood. This is theorising, not leaks. There's something to do with her blood. Obviously, a lot of people know this as well from the trailers. That is a cure to the T-virus, or, many viruses. Alyssa obviously knows this. I think maybe it's got something to do with the Daylight antivirus that we get in the outbreak. And I think because Alyssa probably injected herself with it, and a lot of the survivors injected themselves with it. And so I think Grace is essentially a walking, talking cure for many of the viruses within the Resident Evil universe and within the series. So yeah, that's why I think she's going to be an important character. And if people just want to disregard her so they can get to the parts you play as Leon, you're going to do a disservice to the character and to the storyline and to what Nakanishi's trying to create. That's what I think anyway, personally. And just know, a lot of these Resident Evil channels that cover these leaks, and Dust Golem and people like him, they're only doing it for the attention and the clicks. They're not doing it because they actually have a genuine love for this series. They're just doing it so they can get more of your views and more of your likes. And then when it doesn't come true, that channel's pretty much obsolete. I wouldn't go back on there, and if they kept getting things wrong, I wouldn't go back on there and watch their content. Would you? Just ask yourself that. Obviously, that's not every channel. There are channels that are proper Resident Evil diehard fans, and they still cover the leaks, and I understand that. I do, but just a bit telling how all these channels popped up recently and on my timeline, so they could just cover Resident Evil leaks, and I hadn't heard of them before. and at the same time, Leon Kennedy is getting more attention, the Leon leaks, than the actual game itself. Like, nobody actually cares what the game's going to be like, and sort of the footage and trailers that the game's shown off. Like, no one seems to really give two shits about what the game's going to be about and how it's going to play, and the fact it's a survival horror. Instead, it's Leon in the game. Yeah, Leon best be in the game. Like, really? So what you're saying is you're not going to like the game if Leon's not in the game. Take a second to think how stupid that sounds. I'll repeat that back to yourself. If you are someone that is on this sort of hype train. Because for the rest of us, we just want a really good survival horror. That's what we want. We want that Resident Evil that's got that classic callback to the older games. And if it's over-the-shoulder third person, I want it to be like the Resident Evil 4 remake or Resident Evil 2 remake. Preferably more the Resident Evil 2 remake. So you're hindered a little bit more. It's a bit more survival horror. Instead of, you can't just deflect weapons with your knife or all the rest of that stuff. I'd rather it is more like back to basics, like Resident Evil 2 remake. So yeah, I mean, we can have like defensive items, that's fine, but yeah, the whole dodging thing and it being more action sort of orientated, I'd rather it follow in the steps of RE2 remake, which I think it is, so that's a good thing. A lot of diehard Resident Evil fans would actually want a fixed camera angle as opposed to the over-the-shoulder or first person. So yeah, even I'd get called out for that. But hey, if we could go back to fixed camera or there was an option, I'd love it. But they're not going to do that. Let's be honest. No, they're not going to implement that in today's age. So we have to kind of stick with what we're given. But I'm fine with the over-the-shoulder. I'm fine with it, and I do like the fact we can switch between third person and first person. I think that's a neat take. So yeah, that's about it really. Obviously, it's only a short clip that was shown off, but I'm excited to fight zombies again and then be an actual threat. I think that's really cool. The fact that they showed you they can be a threat still is great, especially after all the stuff we've faced previously, like the Plagas, the Bakers, etc., etc. The G mutants, things like that. I love the fact that the zombies still pose this threat, and I'm absolutely in love with the locations as well, and the fact that it's like this callback to classic Resident Evil, and like the Resident Evil 2 remake and locations like that were reimagined. I'm very, very happy with that. It's got that classic survival horror feel of the older titles, the feel of the Resident Evil 2 remake as well in there. And I couldn't be happier. I'm glad that it's a survival horror game, and they're doing all these like little things as well within it, where you can turn light switches off to hide from stalker enemies or whatever, or enemies that use their vision, more so, and so you can flip the switch. A bit like the lickers, if you just walk, the lickers won't know you're there. That sort of stuff. Playing around with like a survival horror world like that is great. So all these new things, these tricks that they're throwing in there is a welcome addition. So very excited for it. And we've got till February, which isn't long, and then we'll get to experience it and play it for ourselves and get to see how the Umbrella sort of saga finishes and ends, and that's exciting also. So yeah, to stay updated with any more Resident Evil Requiem news, keep it locked to my channel. I've been System Check 66. I'm out of here. Take it easy. Peace.